Okay, let's talk about gate 55. So, first of all, in the I Ching, this is called the gate of abundance. In human design, it's the gate of spirit. In quantum human design, or Karen Curry Parker's work, it's the gate of faith. And then in the gene keys, it's the dragonfly's dream, which I love that reference. And so, and this is a pretty important gate in general. I mean, all the gates are important, right? Like I should say that here, but this one really is a big one. It really shows up in our lives in a pretty big way. And so, um, at the shadow frequency of this gate, we're really dealing with our narrative. It's about feeling like a victim. It's working through victimization to freedom, right? And so, and this is one of the gates that's really about our ability to navigate trauma. So it's an important gate in how we are evolving when we're doing this personal growth work, right? And there's not much that needs to be said about the idea that we are, so freedom, if we look at it from the gene keys perspective and the citic state of freedom, and actually in this gene key, the gift is called freedom, but so is the city. It's also freedom, right? I think it's one of the only gates in which they're the same. And that's because freedom it's a place of, it's an internal state, like peace and joy, right? Those are internal states of being in which we resonate with the energy of freedom. And so the story here then is about, where are we stuck in our past narrative and our old trauma, and we're allowing that to create the cage that keeps us in the space of being a victim. Now, if we take that energy and we internalize it, if we feel like we're trapped, and what this gate asks us is to look at where we're feeling, where we have narrative around feeling trapped. Where am I stuck? Am I stuck in my finances? Am I stuck in my relationship? Am I stuck at work? Right. So it's like, what are we telling ourselves? And recognizing that that is the cage, that you can be the poorest person on earth and still feel abundant, that you can find ways to feel free inside any and that you can't feel free externally. So a lot of this gate has to do with how we try to transcend a problem externally. And that can look like escapism, like when we escape, that's, Netflix and wine, we joke about that in a lot of places, but it's also like just trying to escape the problem. We do that in a lot of different ways. Um, or we are looking for an external way to fix the problem. We might be running from practitioner to practitioner. We've gone through 6 therapists, where, all of the things that say someone outside has not fixed me yet. And I still have this problem. I still have the results of this trauma in my life, or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be working with our trauma, because we absolutely should, and understanding the different stages of trauma and understanding the way that we embed it when we're 0 to 7 or 7 to 14, 14 to 21 versus when we're older, and how we take in trauma and how we can deprogram it. Those are all very different things, and they require different things of our nervous system, but it all boils down to one thing, and that is that there is no way to fix your trauma, to fix your narrative, to fix anything, right? Like the freedom comes when you surrender to that. To be human is to have many experiences. That's not to say that to be human is to have to suffer and to be abused and things like that. I'm not saying that that's it. When those things are happening, though, it's about our ability to recover. It's the resiliency of those things have happened, and they are incredibly hard to go through. And this has, been a big journey in my own life, lots of narrative around what's been hard for me, um, and true trauma in my life, right? And some big loss and things like that. So, and it's not to undervalue those things, are really hard to go through. So I want to say that here, because when we're talking about trauma, we can trigger a lot of information for people. We can trigger a lot of feelings. But what this gate does is it brings us into conversation. So if we look at this gate from the elemental perspective, so from my neurocohesion work or just from the idea of the elements that make up this hexagram, it's actually fire over fire. But sometimes the elements have different qualities. And in this case, it's the top of the hexagram, the top trigram is fire as thunder. And then the bottom hexagram is fire as fire. And what that means, the relationship between those and how it's relevant here is that it's like at the bottom end, it's like that fire for fire's sake. So the bottom of the trigram is saying that what has to happen internally is I need to take action. There's some sort of spark of something that needs to happen, that needs to create change, right? That fire is the beginning of the alchemical process, or it's part of the alchemical process where we really transmute something, right? So there's this deep energy of transformation that's available in that lower trigram, but the higher trigram is really thunder, and thunder is looked at as the voice of heaven. It's the place where we can have conversations between spirit and the physical realm. But it's also, thunder is like it's the energy of jarring. Like if you think about how thunder rolls, it's like it's got a jarring energy. It's meant to kind of shock us into like change, perspective shifts, right? It's like, oh, something needs my attention. Something's really ready to be transmuted. And that's what the energy of this gate is really bringing us. It's saying, yes, we might have these things in our past, these narratives, and beyond narratives, we have experiences, right? And experiences lead us to create narratives. So it's like understanding that that those things are true. And yet every time I go back to them, every time I go back and land in them and reevaluate them and sit in them, then I am actually, my brain doesn't know the difference. Neurologically, what we know is that the brain doesn't know the difference between the future, the past, and the present, right? It's all the same to what the brain is thinking, especially at that brainstem level. So every time we invite that same energy back into the present moment, to pick it apart, to understand it, to put the lens back on in some kind of way, especially when the lens is blaming, like the problem is outside of myself, then we are kind of recreating the trauma in our body. And what this gate invites us into, and it might be a little bit intense right now, right? So it's like, because it's one is being transited, but its programming partner is going to be transited by the full moon in a couple days. And so when we're going to talk about that in just a second. So we've got this real intensity of the whole gate, which is like our trauma is up for us to decide whether or not that's the lens we want to carry. Who can we let go of? Who are we carrying around that is no longer being affected by us carrying them around? And we're ready to put that narrative down, because the victimization is only keeping us stuck. It's not helping anyone else, right? So that's a little bit about what this gate is bringing us. It's like, can we look at our lives and say, who am I blaming for my situation? What am I blaming for my situation? And am I ready to start to create a new narrative? You know, that yes, those things might have happened. Yes, this thing might have happened in my life, but I'm ready to get the gifts that are there for me, whatever they are, because there's always something, because resiliency comes with us learning something and growing and doing something in a new way. And that's the energy of this gate, is like, I actually can get a gift, and there is freedom in me releasing my need to be stuck in that place anymore. And the fine line between where I think I'm stuck and where I choose to be free, right? So there's the difference between that's the conversation between spirit and the physical realm. So on the other end of this programming partner, and programming partners, by the way, are when, if you look at the I Ching in a circle, the gates that would be, in astrology, we would say square, so across the chart, right? And they at their shadow levels create tension for us to grow. They create tension between each other. And that the gift is that Venn diagram between them, so that we can express the higher expression of these gates. And so the gate 59 is really about, well, we would say it's the gate of in the Gene Keys. Woo, it's about dishonesty. And it isn't about like someone else being dishonest with us. It's more where we're not really being fully honest with ourselves, where we're not really making the space for us to quit blaming a situation, because we would say in our brain health coaching that when we're blaming, then we're disempowering ourselves. We're putting the power outside of ourselves. We're putting it on a person, an experience, a government, right? Like we're putting the power outside of ourselves and we're blaming something. When really what needs to happen is we need to go internally and look at where we're ready to put down the blame outside of us, look at where it's affecting our physical, mental, and emotional, spiritual health, and then transmute it and move past it. It's not, we there's all sorts of ways that we can stay stuck in a victim story, and there's all sorts of ways in which we can choose to get present with that and curious with it and compassionate with it, and then continue to grow it into the future. So I've always said in my work that we're not really about always focused on what's been wrong in the past, although we have to sometimes our nervous system needs us to deal with what happened in the past. But really, we're here to help rewrite the narrative. We're here to help you create the future that you want. And it certainly doesn't live in the narrative of the past, right? So often what we want is where we just need to look at where we're not willing to let go of some sort of story that we have about the past, or some sort of experience, or some sort of blame that we're holding on to. And so when we get to the very source of these two gates, we're really talking about that thunder energy of like, there's only one way to heal our pain, and that is through surrendering it to that higher purpose, that higher self, that higher energy that you can connect into, right? That the energy of the universe, the loving energy of the universe, if it's or if it's just the energy of the cosmos and nature, the universal energy, or you might have other words for it, source and spirit and all the things, but there's a place where your connection to that energy is the only thing that can actually heal you. And so when you actually are able to recognize that, then it doesn't actually matter what anyone says to you. They can't say something that hurts you anymore. They can't, I mean, they can physically hurt you, and that's still a truth, right? That there's a physical thing that can still happen. But I'm really talking more about that emotional, mental wounding. It's like, I don't have to hold you in my life. I can have great boundaries, but I also don't have to have any narrative around it, right? So it's like, and when you can really get to that place where the only place you need to go to heal your little wounds, your little core wounds, is in your own heart, and let the love and light of your heart hold the parts of you that have been wounded and heal the parts of you that have been wounded, then what people are saying and what people are doing don't really matter, right? So it's like, but it's hard that's a really hard place for us to get. And we are human, and we get triggered, and all the things that all those things are true. And also, the closer we are to our internal source, the more we radiate our true self, the less triggered we are by nature, because it just isn't triggering to us. It just passes through. We don't have the connection to it. We don't have the part of us that wants to run with that narrative. So this particular gate 55 is part of the emoting channel, if we're looking at the circuitry in human design. And that's really about, that whole channel allows us to feel deeply, to feel all of the feelings, the highs and the lows, and to know that it's okay to feel all of those things, and to let the emotional wave of being human and being this infinite being of love and light that's having this human experience. And the human experience has thoughts, and it has emotions, and it has feelings, and it has experiences, right? So it's like that's what this particular channel really allows us to navigate, is that there's nothing wrong with the highs and lows. And the only thing wrong with the low emotion is the story we have around it, that it should be something else, that we shouldn't be that feeling that way, or the blame, the guilt, the shoulds, all of that stuff. So, and actually, interestingly enough, when we look at this circuitry, it's the circuitry of music. It's an auditory circuitry. So it's like there's this is a channel that we see a lot in like in musical aspects of things. So musicians who write about the feelings, they express this emotional wave. They can take you up and they can take you down, but also in poetry and art in that same kind of way. It's the auditory expression of this emotional wave. So we actually love this wave, right? So because the gate 55 is also known as the provocative gate, right? It's here to provoke our spirit. And that's what we see with that fire over fire. It's like there's when you have the gate 55, you just being in the room is part of evoking the spirit of yourself and people around you, right? And so it's got some of that provocative energy, but bringing it back all the way, and in closing, it's really the gate of abundance. And the gate of abundance sits in this place of, I am free to be me. I am free from narrative. I am free from the triggering world around me. And I am so deeply aligned with that inner voice of heaven in my heart and how it holds me, that I am in alignment, right? And then what I need comes to me. I feel rich from the inside out, right? It doesn't matter what I own or how much money I have. The abundance is a richness in the heart. And that naturally leads to the right situations for us to be physically provided for, right? Because there is this place where we need to ground the idea of money into the physical earth in order to create a physical result. But this energy is that richness comes first from my alignment with source. So that might be up for you because, again, we're in this gate, we're heading into a full moon, and the full moon is going to highlight that gate 59, which is again about like, where do I need to look at how I'm being honest with myself and what I'm ready to release the dilemma of trauma, right? Okay. I've talked enough. I hope that's helpful, and I'll see you soon.